All right, so hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another ride and talk. I am traveling this week, so I thought it'd be easier if I just sort of talk over a ride, which is a pretty good ride, so check it out. But today we're going to be talking about something I see all of the time in teaching and learning, and that is teachers who approach adult learners with a theory X mindset. And essentially, I want to argue that that is a terrible way to approach learning. Now, this comes from a classic management idea, but I want to show what it does in teaching. Let's ride and talk about what happens when we assume students are lazy, unmotivated, or out to get us, and why that assumption holds them back, ultimately holds us back too. And Theory X is that type of approach. So, in 20 seconds, here's the version. According to Douglas McGregor, Theory X people are those who, or managers who approach Theory X, think that people dislike work, they need control or oversight, we need to pressure them to get things done. Whereas a Theory Y manager, they assume that people want to do well, they thrive when given support, respect, and autonomy. So as instructors, many instructors often act like Theory X managers. They think students are lazy or dishonest. And so I think it would be much better to approach and inhabit a space of Theory Y. And I try myself to be sort of a Theory Y thinker. So you've probably heard or seen this, right? Like you've heard students don't read the syllabus. They're lazy. They won't do anything unless forced to do it. You hear people say things like they'll cheat if I don't watch them. Now that mindset assumes a deficiency before we even know anything about the learner's life. And I think that's just ultimately very terrible. So that's ultimately how Theory X sort of shows up. But here's sort of a different take, right? That most adult learners aren't lazy at all. They're dealing with real life. They have work, they have family, they have stress, unpredictability. And often, I think, they're honest about their challenges, but maybe a little bit afraid, right? So here's a reflexive question to ask ourselves as instructors. If someone feels the need to make something up, what are we ultimately doing that makes honesty feel too risky or costly? When we start there, I think we move from policing students to ultimately supporting them. So for me, when I hear from students that they couldn't do something or they're running behind or this is why they were late, I want to believe them. I think I want to encourage them to be honest with me about what may be holding them back. And if they feel that they have to make something up, then maybe it's more of a problem with me and my approach to things and how they feel about me than it is about them. So maybe think about this. Remember, these ultimately are adults, right? They have responsibilities outside of class, they have jobs, family, bills, lots of stress. And sometimes motivation will dip, not because they don't care, but because life careens, right? Fluctuations don't always signal laziness or bad character. Often they reflect real, messy human lives. So, as talent development professionals, especially those teaching in higher education, let's approach adult learners as adults and let's approach students as adults. Okay, I will be honest, right? Sure, maybe some learners will try to game the system or use loopholes or find shortcuts. They are, again, humans after all. For example, let's take this real case, right? So, Kenyon Wilson, he was the Associate Dean of Performing Arts at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Decided to put an Easter egg in the syllabus for his music seminar class, and this became very popular in the news. Now, the hint read thus: free to those who claims locker 147, combination 15, 25, 35. So students may be ineligible to make up classes and so on. So we kind of like embedded this in the syllabus. Now, this line would have led students to a locker and ultimately a $50 bill that was in that, free to any student who would claim it, because if they had read the syllabus, they would have figured out the riddle and got it. But at the end of the semester, when he went to check the locker, the money was still there. Now, Wilson, who was covered on CNN, said, it's an academic trope that no one reads the syllabus. It's analogous to the terms and conditions when you're installing software, essentially, is what he said. Everyone clicks that they've read it when no one ever does. I think he was trying to make this sort of in jest, but I think here's my philosophy. Does designing your course around catching the 1% make it better for the 99%? So treating learners like suspects ultimately breeds suspicion. It weeds out trust, not laziness. I think embedding something like that in the syllabus is kind of a jerk move. If there's something important in the syllabus, point it out to the students. And if you have $50 to give to students, why not just give it to them? They struggle with finances. So I think doing these kind of tricks, for me, it just kind of breeds suspicion. I get what he was coming at. I think ultimately it was to make a point that no one's reading the syllabus. But I do think kind of the way of going about it in and of itself is something worth thinking about. I would say, without too much judgment, that was hindering towards a theory X kind of way of doing things versus a theory Y, where you just say, look, this is what's important. And by the way, I have a riddle in the syllabus, and if you could figure it out, you'll earn $50. And so it kind of could create an interesting gamification in the syllabus, but everybody sort of knows about it rather than being deceptive and then later saying, "Ah, you didn't get my $50." Anyway, that's just me. Tell me what you think in the comments. So in cycling, I want to make an analogy here. There's this idea of the domestique. And the domestique does the heavy lifting. They break the wind, they pace, they carry bottles, they shield their teammates from headwinds, while letting the sprinters or the climbers ultimately shine. So the domestique does much of the work, but doesn't take ultimately the glory. Now, their goal is to help the team win, not themselves win. I think a Theory Y instructor can be a teaching domestique. You ride up front, you carry the burdens, you design with complexity, and you get rid of the confusing logistics, right? You break the headwinds, you provide clear instructions, smooth flows, you remove friction, you shield the students, you absorb the stress so learners don't ultimately bottom out. You can set the tempo, you can scaffold tasks, avoid overload, build momentum for the students. You supply the water in essence and support. So this could be like feedback and empathy and resources and encouragement. You may not get the glory. The learner ultimately gets the glory. Success looks like their growth, not your control. So I would recommend, again, that we just be like the domestique, which I think the word domesticated in a sense comes from it. So the word dome or home, to really play with the metaphor, we want to give students home, a place to feel at home. And our job is to be the person that invites them into our classrooms and into our spaces. And this is for trainers as well in the corporate sector. Bring people into the room, get them comfortable, do the heavy work for them, get out of the way so the content, the important stuff, shines. So ultimately, what does writing like a domestique mean in practice, or teaching like a domestique? So you want to assume capacity of students, not deficiency. You want to support before you punish. You want to clarify before you accuse. You want to design for real life. You want to reduce friction and confusion. You want to value effort and not perfection. Ultimately, this is about designing environments that trust adult learners. And college students, and many of them nowadays coming back, are very much adults, right? And they're adult learners. Even the 18-year-old is an adult and should be treated as such. And then in training and development, almost nearly all of our trainees will be adults. And we need to think about what might have happened to them even right before they came into this corporate training, or what their fears are about their relevance at work, and having honest dialogue about that. So let's go ahead and extend the metaphor analogy of the domestique to talk about three actionable moves an instructor could make. They could set the pace. They could design the course to build gradually, scaffold skills, and avoid overloading students. They could break the headwind. They could make navigation much easier. By this, I mean a clearer syllabus, clear instructions, consistent patterns, ultimately with the goal of reducing cognitive load. They could offer the bottle, which by this, I mean they could give feedback or check-ins, provide empathy, remind learners that you're writing with them, providing resources, flexibility, clarity, dialoguing about how we share the same goals. Ultimately, um, we're all headed to the same place, and we understand what the path is, and that path may have some hills. And while we're heading towards that hill, whatever it might be, let's say a major project, what can I do as the domestique, as your instructor, to get you to that endpoint? So here's the thing. I know going from a theory X to a theory Y mindset is a big shift. But the question is, are we designing teaching like a surveillance operation, one that expects cheating, laziness, or deception? Or are we designing it like a team sport, one that supports, trusts, coaches, assumes good intent? If you start from distrust, you get distrust. And if you start from trust, you get people who are capable and committed, fully developed beings in the possibility of becoming. So, anyway, thank you for joining me on this ride. Hopefully, you enjoyed watching it and listening to me. But here's the bottom line before we depart. If you treat learners like problems, they'll behave like problems. But if you treat them like cyclists, that is, individuals, effort seekers who want to support the team, you'll get a different class entirely, a different seminar entirely. Now, what signs of Theory X do you see in your world, and how do you ride as a domestique, to play with that analogy? Let me know. And in the meantime, I do hope that you'll ride on. Happy teaching and learning.
All right, you can see here I've joined a group, and it's the C group, so I should be able to stay up with them. Give it a shot. You'll see there's a little coffee thing there that allows you to take a coffee break where you can stay with the group without putting any effort in, which is kind of nice sometimes. You need to grab a drink of water, get a snack, or just take a break. Anyway, so again, this is Tuesday's Talent Development Tune-Up. I've been writing by myself mostly in London right now. I just got connected to this group. I'm going to ride with them for a while. And this week I'm going to be doing a talk over just with the PowerPoint. I haven't really had a lot of time this week. It's close to finals. Pretty busy, so I've got the deck together. I didn't really feel like doing a ride and talk, so I'll do a ride, then talk. See you later. I'm going to jump back in because this fits last week's session really well, the riding with the peloton. I was riding by myself. I wasn't doing very high speed. It was kind of boring. Now I've jumped onto this group. I'm going to get this ride done quickly, and it's more interesting. So there's an example of how working together makes a difference. All right, now I'll see you later.